So what then is the waiting time problem in evolutionary biology? Well, evolution is supposed to proceed by random mutation and natural and sexual selection. That's the non-random component of evolution, that natural selection and indeed sexual selection preserve the successful gene variants, those gene variants that help the organism to reproduce, and those successful combinations of gene variants end up, the advantageous ones end up becoming more dominant or more frequent in the population over time. Now, selection can only work on mutations with a positive or negative adaptive value. So there's different types of selection. There's positive selection, there's purifying selection, and those select or purge from the genome those mutations, those changes which are either advantageous to the organism's survival or disadvantageous. And at least some adaptive advantages, as I hope I showed last week, require 2 or more coordinating mutations in order to be realized. Now, all mutations have 2 time constraints that depend on the population size and the generation time. Those are the waiting time for a mutation to occur in the population, right? So this is how long is it going to take for chance mutations to produce a particular mutation in the population? And the waiting time for the fixation of this mutation. So it's not just enough to get a mutation. It's not just enough for that gene variant to arise in the population. It's got to go from being the lone individual out there to becoming the norm that gets established in the population. And that's known as fixation. Now, the question that we can ask is, does the history of life provide the resources for evolution to accommodate these waiting times? And I'm going to answer that question decisively in the negative. So the waiting time dilemma then is as follows. With large populations, the waiting time for a mutation to occur decreases, but fixation time increases. Now, why is that the case? Well, if you have a large population size, then there's more individuals for a mutation to arise in. So you have more probabilistic resources, if you will. So the waiting time for the mutation to arise in the first place decreases. But the time for that mutation, that gene variant to become fixed in the population increases because there are more individuals for it to sweep through, right, in the population. On the other hand, with small population sizes, the waiting time for a mutation to occur increases, but fixation time decreases because you have fewer individuals for the mutation to arise in, so you have less probabilistic resources, so it takes longer for the mutation to arise. But then on the flip side of that, the fixation time will decrease because there's fewer individuals for that mutation to sweep through. So thus, there's no easy way for evolution to work around the waiting time problem. With a large population or a small population, you either have to contend with the waiting time for the mutation to arise or the waiting time for the mutation to become fixed in the population, to go from being that lone individual out there with that mutation becoming the norm that gets established.